Can we have a round of applause for our first guest speaker this evening, Frunch Nazzari? Thank you for joining us tonight, Frunch.
Good evening.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
No worries, my pleasure. The Rooftop Cinema, amongst other things. But well, hopefully we can dig a little bit deeper into how that started. So how did that all kick off for you, Frunch?
I'm very proud of Rooftop. It's actually the jewel in my crown. It's a really special business, and it kind of how it started was a little bit serendipitous. I started off my kind of first job was as a nightclub promoter when I was a teenager, and
second one in this series.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
There you go. I started off in clubs, right? Yeah. So as a little promoter, hustling and getting people to come to my nights and doing all that kind of stuff, and then at the same time, I was finishing up school and I ended up studying media, which was a kind of interesting mix, but one of my business management teacher actually said to me, hey, you should go into advertising, and I didn't even recognize there was an industry there. But anyway, I ended up going and studying media, planning and buying, whilst being a little hustler, doing events, and slowly I evolved in my career as an event promoter and started touring and doing all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, while I was studying, it was a fantastic place for me to learn how to become my own kind of boss. It was effectively I was a sole trader, but I got to the end of my studies and wondered what I was going to do, and I got approached by the guys at Moonlight Cinema to join them and to join their sales team, and I joined the guys at Moonlight, and I worked with them for 3.5 years, and it was a really great experience. And I met my business partner that I started Rooftop Cinema with, Barry Barton, and he always spoke to me about the Moonlight offering, and we often had these kind of visions about what cinema should be and what the audiences wanted, and we often had a fantasy of creating a space for people like ourselves, and the idea of what a beautiful medium cinema was, and beautiful environments that it could be within. And you guys are familiar with Moonlight Cinema. It's a really beautiful cinema in the Botanical Gardens. If you guys aren't familiar with that, it's a really special experience. But we wanted to extend that, and we thought about doing a cinema on a rooftop. And Barry was so obsessed with it, he actually went and would go to the Rialto observation deck and look for rooftops. And lo and behold, serendipitously, one day we were having a conversation at a local cafe, which was close to Barry's office after he left a Moonlight, and someone said you should check out a roof, and we went, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And you're very keen, and you have a lot of focus on understanding your customer. So was that key to those initial stages of building the business?
I think it's yes. Mm-hmm. To answer that directly, as a business person, I don't really buy into a lot of the ethos around, lean startups and all this kind of stuff that's out there at the moment. And you got to strap in and go hard and do all that kind of stuff. I think it's very important that you really feel your business and you have an understanding of the community and the network and create your own network. For me, I'm a media person. I come from an events background, and that's why I talk about my promoting background, because I learned how to hustle doing events. And then whilst studying media, I learned the value of an audience and learned the value of a community and how to commercialize that. And that's really important, I think. Mm-hmm. That's where we saw the gap for Rooftop Cinema. Obviously, I was out selling cinema for the Moonlight guys, and I had a firm understanding of that and what it took to actually create revenue for that business. But I was also understanding a community, and we saw a gap in the upper end of it, because Moonlight's a proposition for 2,000 people, Rooftop's a proposition for 200. So we understood the value of what we were trying to create, but I'm one who believes in community and audience and yeah.
And how do you develop that community?
It's a great question. That takes many different shapes and forms. I must point out that when we started Rooftop, our first media partner was MySpace. That's to give you an understanding of like.
Not everyone's going to remember that one.
Yeah, does anyone actually? Well, MySpace was actually, that was when it was the primary was the first social media platform, and it's just a very interesting way of kind of explaining the world then. How you build a community, right? I put my brand hat on. I think, you've got to really have a clear understanding of what your proposition is. You've really got to stay true to what that is. And I think the clearer you are with who you're catering for, the more magnetic you become. Creating a community in this day and age is very difficult to create signal over noise. There's a plethora of information that's kind of out there that's all fighting for everyone's attention. So building a community is very tough in this day and age, and that's why you've got to stay true to what you know.
So does that come down to some good storytelling? You're also renowned for that as well, right?
When we set up Rooftop, right, it was a very interesting time. I was 26 years old, and I decided that I'd no longer wanted to work with the guys at Moonlight, and Barry had gone and started his thing, and we were kind of talking about a range of different ideas. And this is where things get a little bit crazy, right? Because we were hedging our bets, so we were hedging on hedging and hedging. So we set up a subcultural city guide, which was called The Thousands, or 3,000 at the time, and then based on the postcode. And we also set up Rooftop Cinema, and we set up basically a publishing business, which was overarching, which was called Right Angle, and
they give you the platform to spread the message.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. When you think about business and understanding communities and doing what you're doing and developing a narrative, you refine your storytelling skills, right? So all of us can tell stories. It's within all of us. But for Rooftop, when we were building that as a business, it wasn't about telling the Rooftop story. It was more about creating an environment for people, like-minded individuals to come to. For The Thousands, it was about disclosing a part of the city, like it was understanding what that was and then developing the narrative off the back of that. And then we saw an opportunity to provide that as a service. When we were coming up with these ideas, we were perceived as innovative at the time. So we had set up the Subcultural Guide, and it was a EDM, so it was just an email that went out. And a lot of advertisers thought that we were like tech freaks or something like that. They're like, this is amazing. Can you come and build our websites, or can you come and do this? And so we actually started to provide those services off the back of that. Not so much building websites, but creating content and connecting them with an audience. And then we did the same with Rooftop.
Yeah. And how important is creating the content and going down a content marketing approach? Is it the content will bring people in, or are you a firm believer in driving sales of?
Content marketing is a buzz term. And I'm not trying to discredit the industry that I'm within at all, but it's just modern day, it's just like a modern day creative agency. Content marketing, we're playing to the platforms that exist. We've got a fragmented media landscape now that exists. Once again, when you go back 10 years or you go back 15 years, there was a handful of newspapers, there was a handful of stations, those kind of things. It was very easy to think about media and how you connect, but then also when we talk about content, it was creating pamphlets and brochures, which were it's very small. Tangible. Now, let's list the social platforms or the platforms that exist. There's a need to understand how to tell a story and how to tell that effectively. That's where the content agency has kind of emerged from. Our business is very much focused on understanding audiences. We don't just go out there and speak to every audience. We focus fundamentally on understanding tone and how we actually create authentic content. That's what we do. That's a part of what we do. But we provide an end-to-end solution with what we do. So we don't just create content and then just go to clients, hey, you just deal with that. We also think about how we can distribute it, which is a little bit different to most of them. Yeah,
and also understanding where those people are hanging out and spending their time is obviously quite crucial to growing that business, right?
Yeah.
In the early stages, what were some of the main challenges that you were faced with? Obviously you had 200 capacity. Was that something that played in your favour or?
I think if I can give you guys something and talk about that, the main challenges that I faced initially when building the business were probably more with myself than the market barriers. There was obviously legislation and stuff like that. Can you imagine? Here I was, this young kid who knows nothing about nothing, and I rang up the council and was like, "Hey, I want to lodge a planning permit to put a cinema on a roof." And they said, "A cinema on a roof?" And they were like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Oh, we want to put a cinema on top of a roof in the city." And they're like, "I don't even know who to put you through to." I don't know how to do that. So like, apart from the obvious, a lot of the barriers come from within yourself, like the fears, the insecurities and all that kind of stuff. So I come from a place where my family were entrepreneurs. Come from a family of immigrants. We had nothing, we came from nothing. My parents got me through school, I got a great education. I kind of afforded it based on what they gave me, that opportunity to do things. So I tried really hard to impress my parents and be proud, which you still do have fears and stuff. And so that's what the biggest challenge I think in starting a business is, that you're going to fail. The beautiful thing about being young and starting a business is, you don't know what you don't know. And so ringing the council and asking to lodge a permit for the first time on that kind of stuff, if I had to do it now, I'd probably be quivering. I'm going to put a cinema on it. It's a very different approach. So there's a few things, but the biggest challenge I think is yourself, apart from all the getting liquor licenses and getting this. But I had a great experience in that context, that we actually kind of changed the city. Rooftop cinema was a catalyst for change. Melbourne went from the laneways to the rooftops based on what we did. So we helped and we worked with the city, and the city of Melbourne at that time was quite progressive. Not saying that it isn't now, but it was quite progressive. We actually got awarded grants, and we kind of worked together to build this, and they knew that it was something special. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was an interesting time, but the challenges, I think, from any business are yourself. I think, I can vividly recall when I was saying to my father that I wanted to do this business. He kind of said to me, "You've spoken long enough about it." And he was about to get on a plane and go overseas. And he said, "When I come back, I want you to have done something about it. And the one thing I want you to have done is just make sure you don't look back. Make a decision and don't look back. Look forward." And that's something that I think is really quite poignant. If you're committed to a business idea, you're the barrier. I mean, there's obviously a lot of obstacles, don't get me wrong. And in Australia, doing business is very tough. But you've got to back yourself to have the ability to think through things. And that's where we talk about the insecurities that emerge in businesses. Like, I can remember very vividly, another cinema operator was attending the cinema that we were on, and he was bad mouthing us. And I can remember, he's like, "This is never going to last. You can't run cinemas on a roof. How do they get the footfall and all this kind of stuff?" And it's so funny because recently they have opened up a cinema and put a cinema on their roof, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, it's just crazy. But you're your biggest obstacle. I know. Yeah, it's you versus you when you're setting up a business.
Yeah, so obviously coming from a background of entrepreneurs and the family, surely they must be more at ease with failure. So how did you deal with failure yourself? Were you scared about what their thoughts of failure or what your thoughts of failure were?
Failure. I don't think that entrepreneurs right? Failure is the same for everyone. We are all scared of it, right? And don't be, there's this whole thing, don't be afraid to fail. No, be afraid to fail. my greatest fears are my greatest motivators, and you've just got to be able to recognize that and drive that. And I don't want to be all like Tony Robbins on you or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, you've got to be able to balance that point of like when you're taking something or an idea, like, oh, I'm going to put a cinema on a roof in the city, like, and people just go, are you crazy? What are you doing? You've got to understand that when someone says that you're crazy, not to go, oh, maybe I am crazy and I'm not going to do it. Or if someone gives you an opinion, to kind of be able to back yourself and go, oh, it's okay. And then understand, measure your failure. Don't take stupid risks. Like, just be rational and contextualize a lot of what you do. Then, yeah. My family, like, their support is unwavering. So that was also a relief for me, just knowing that if I was to not succeed, that there was a non-judgmental support network that I could fall back into. And not everyone has that. And you've got to, you know, that's my circumstance and that's unique to me. You know, you've got to understand that. And that's why I'm saying just rationalize the context of where you're at. Like, I was living out of home at the time and then I moved back home, so I didn't have to worry about things like rent and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I was fortunate enough that I had parents. My mum fed me too much, always being an Italian mother. But, you know, it's one of those things. I had a support network.
And thinking about how you deal with decision making today, is that fear still there? And how do you deal with it?
I'm petrified right now. I think I might fuck this up. I'm always got this fear of failing. In every decision, you do look at the pros and the cons. We can't just be completely optimistic and think that everything is going to be fine every time.
Yeah. And what does the future hold for the Rooftop Cinema?
More of the same. So when I say more of the same, I'll give you a picture into why didn't we go and do multiple cinemas? Because we were at a time when there weren't many around, and I made a decision, and at the time, when, you know, amongst the partners and the businesses and everything like that, and this is something, bigger is not always better. And it's not about growth. I just want to contextualize that for you guys. And when you're starting your business, be okay with small, but I will push something on you. Try and be the best at what you do, or try and do something of quality. So I will say that I think that Rooftop Cinema is arguably the world's best outdoor cinema experience. And I challenge people to find a better outdoor cinema experience in the world with what we do. And that's part of our strategy, is to make our cinema better. So many years ago, when we looked at, can we do this at scale, the level of investment was significant and the ability to deliver the service was difficult. And then when I recognized what my skills were, yeah, okay, I was a little hustler, promoter, and I understand media, so I can sell sponsorship and advertising, but I wasn't a hospitality operator. So when I looked at that, to launch the business to the level that we needed to, I needed to be a hospitality operator, which then would send me in a different track. So I stayed true to what we were about, which is very important. And then I looked at where did I want Rooftop to be, and I didn't think that I could deliver the best outdoor cinema experience in the world, or at a level that it was, at scale. So I said, I'm not expanding, we won't do that. And we were looking at sites in Sydney and doing that. And so I completely pulled back and focused on how do we make it better. And Rooftop, we're obsessed with it. So we think about it from a full sensory perspective. So we think about how can we engage every sense, the look, the touch, the taste, the smell, the sound, all that kind of stuff is really what we're doing. And we focus on that with Rooftop Cinema. So it's about telling a story, but it's also about engaging the senses. So what we want to do is more of the same, and how can we be the best at what we do and deliver an experience which is really unique.
When you were making those decisions around the option to scale, did you tap into some advice? Were you kind of making those decisions by yourselves? Can you walk through that with us a little bit?
Yeah. Yes, I have built a network of advisors around me. So I had an advisory board that was around me, and I have a confidants, mentors, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I tapped into everyone.
Yeah.
I often argue with them.
Yeah.
Because they tell me what I don't want to hear, and that's the honesty in business. But then once again, you've got to rationalize that. You've got to contextualize it. What does that mean to you, and how do you navigate through that? But we made some really, I think we made some profound moves in that period that set us up for the long term. We're 13 years into our business now, and that's great. I've never done anything for 13 years. Even my wife, it's like this is I've done this for.
Hopefully she'll outlast the business, right?
Yeah. She's 12.
Okay.
12 years we've been together.
Okay, cool. We're actually going to have to leave it there because you're going to have to duck off soon. But what we're going to do is we're going to change the format slightly because Frunch is going to maybe just answer a few questions from yourselves if you do have any. So I'm going to put it out to the audience and see if we have any questions to begin with. Don't be shy.
Yeah, that compelling was I? I gave it all.
Takes a little bit of time. Okay, takes a little bit of time for them to warm up, I think, usually.
You're right.
Guys, I'm going to ask you to give it.
Go.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yeah. Tin, here we go.
Hey, Frank, if you could give yourself one advice to your younger self, what would you say to your younger self at 26?
What would I say to my younger self at 26 now, looking back? I often think about that and think about what would I do or what would I say to myself or that. I don't have any regrets because every mistake I've made, I think I've learnt from things really well and adapted myself. We're always going to have regrets, right? So even though I've got no regrets, I have heaps of regrets, heaps. But I think the commitment, like I did stay in limbo for a long time. I think making decisions is really powerful. Don't like to make a decision whether it's right or wrong, just to learn from it is really what's important. So just make decisions. And if I could look back at myself, it's like, don't ever sit there and stew on things or get too kind of like stuck. Yeah, make the decision.
Awesome. Okay. Lady here, I'm just going to pass the mic. If Basil, would you mind? Excellent, thanks.
So you've been in this for 13 years. Do you have like a daily ritual?
No. But do I think about a daily ritual? Every day. No. That's a great question. My dad always would say that one of the most beautiful things in life is habit, like having a habit and stuff like that. And I have a dream of what I'd like my daily routine to be, and then there's a reality of what that is. I'm one of those guys everyone hates. Like I get up at 4:30, I go run, I exercise, and then I come back and make sure I have a breakfast, and then I like to get in and address try and read and address important things within the day, and then set myself up for meetings and do all that kind of stuff. If that happens, that's a wonderful day. The reality of day to day, you just got to take it as it comes. I've gotten to the point now in my life where I'm running about 6 businesses, and I've found that very challenging. I've got a 16-week-old daughter as well. That's a challenge. Also being husband, father, businessman, all that kind of stuff. That's challenging. Having routine for me I really struggle with that. So I spend a lot of time thinking about that. So it's, when you ask me that, it's just like, fuck. I fucked it today. No, no, it's okay.
Great question.
Yeah.
Cool. Great answer as well. I think the gentleman in the white t-shirt, you had one? No, right, okay.
To the day, what's your biggest fuck up?
Oh. Which one? It's funny. I can't tell you what my biggest fuck up would be. I've burnt hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? I've burnt money, I've burnt relationships in some cases and stuff like that. What level is the biggest fuck up? Is there one that's more prominent than the others? Shit happens along the way. Like I said, if you can just reflect and learn from it and go, what am I going to take away from that? How's that going to shape me as a person? And that's where I keep talking about the biggest challenge you have is with yourself. I fuck up every day. I just try and make sure that if I fucked up, I understood what that was and why that happened, and then how I'm going to learn from it. You know, I'm quite stoic. I'm just trying to be better than yesterday. You know, that's my attitude. That's what I'm trying to do. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm just like, I do internalize a lot and think about that, and just, you know, that's what I'm trying to do. So I've made so many mistakes. I just don't know which one I would say is bigger than the other. You know. Yeah.
Awesome. Lady there in the grey.
What
Could you just pass that?
do you think your greatest skill is that contributes to your success?
Oh, okay. Oh, this is interesting, right? What is my greatest skill? So this is an insight into me. I actually feel like I don't have any skills. Right? So, and this is where you have that battle with yourself where you go, oh, no, I don't have any skills. Naturally, I'm a passionate person. So I have the ability to really get obsessed with something. And I think that focus has been a gift for me. So like when I get passionate about something, I get passionate about it, and I really do love it. I made some decisions very early on within my career as running the business that, you know, I would focus on selling. And so one of my great skills is the ability to focus on driving the revenue for the business. And that's one of my great skills, and I feel that I'm quite a good, you know, at being able to sell and tell the story of the business. I'm not like, I don't sell like I hustle and don't do it like that, but an ability to understand the importance of providing service and providing a quality service, and that's what we're trying to do as a business. And with Rooftop, that's what I'm trying to set up, that I can sell the best possible product that I can to my clients and my advertisers. So I think I know how to sell. That's one of my greatest skills.
Thank you. Great answer, great question. Probably the last one, if we do have one. Is there anybody else out there with a question?
I was just going to ask, are you still in business with your original business partner?
No.
And why?
Yeah, great question. I can very easily answer that. We got to a point I had been in business for 7 years, the monotony of the challenges that we faced, but I also recognised that there was a need for a particular type of leadership within that current business. And then I had made some decisions within myself on what I wanted to do. So I was committed to change, and do not be afraid of change. Change brings growth. So it's very important to understand that everything is going to change. Often we get scared of change, so we don't really embrace it. So I got into a point where the business was going in a particular direction. There were some things that were happening within that business. We had fucked up a few things, and I just recognised that there was a need for change. We had a conversation about where that change needed to go, and I recognised that there were just some fundamental differences. And I use the word fundamental. We had different views. So when you're in a partnership and you recognise that you have different views, and you're a leader and you own that business, I have some pretty clear views. Like when you own a business, don't listen to anyone who says, oh, hey, you know, within 18 months you'll know whether you've got a business or not. Businesses take a long time to get started. So it takes 3 years to work out what you're doing, right? And then it takes another 2 years for you to make back the money you've lost trying to work out what it is that you do. So when you look at that, it takes 5 years. But at that point where I was, we were 7 years down the line, and looking at where it was, I was like, I'm not really committed to the next 5-year window. So I decided that we would work out who would take what and how that would go. He wanted to keep the publishing assets, and I decided that I was going to focus on the media assets. So that's the way we went, and you know, we're still cool. We're still cool. Say hello. It's like an ex-girlfriend. You don't like, you know, hey, but you know, that's where it's at. But yeah, always.
Thank you very much for your questions, and thank you very much, Frunch, for being so generous with your time and your answers as well.
My pleasure.
So Yeah. Guys, can you join me in a round of applause for Frunch Nazzari?
Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me that I have to leave. I gotta go sell some stuff.
Yeah.